All right, and I am done. I just finished listening to The Broken Eye by Brent. This is the third book in the Lightbringer series, and I want to give you my initial thoughts upon finishing the book, which was just now. I'm going to try to collect my thoughts because that ending of the book was love the ending. Not the whole ending. The last like 3 or 4 pages or whatever it was in audio to book conversion, but it was a wonderful twist that I did not see coming, and I love it. It's getting me excited for the next book. Ultimately, I'm giving this book a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It's a significant reduction from the previous 2 books. I have a lot of problems with this book, but ultimately I did like it. But this review is going to end up sounding like I hated it, because I think I have more negative things to say than positive. Because my positives really can't be so much quantified into a bunch of different things. Because in general, I like the plot is engaging. I feel interested in the development of these characters. I feel invested in some of the characters. I really like Kip. I want to see him succeed. Overall, I feel engrossed in the world that has been built here. So, I am excited to read this next book, especially so after that ending. I find that Andros Guile, who is in many ways the antagonist of the story, he's not really the antagonist until the second book, but he very much is so now. And I love this character. I hate him, but I love him. He kind of reminds me a little bit of like that feeling that I got from Glokta in the First Law trilogy. Not quite as good of a written character as Glokta, but I do love this bad guy. And it's rare for me, I find that I get suckered into these stories a lot where I love the good guys, I hate the bad guys. But this is one of those rare examples where, I'm just very much engaged by this character and I almost want him to succeed. He's written so well. But if he ends up dying, I'll be cheering along with what you're supposed to be doing. But I have very conflicted feelings about this guy, and that means he's a very well-written character. I love this dynamic between Kip, who is the main character, and Andros, and really everybody's interaction with Andros. He just makes all of the characters go up a little bit, and every time that he's introduced into a chapter, I'm really excited to read that chapter. So I mentioned that the world building is nice. I do feel sucked into this world, and I feel like it's a real place that I will remember for many years to come. But I do find that the magic system is getting a little bit too convoluted. In the first book, I felt a little overwhelmed by it, but not in a bad way. I say this as somebody who, my favorite series is Malazan, and Malazan has a grossly complicated magic system that even veterans of the series can't perfectly explain to you back. And one of the beauties of the Malazan magic system is that it's so complicated and so vague that you feel like you're not missing out on something in the story when you stumble along it and don't fully understand everything. In this story, though, and I'm going to try to explain this in a way that makes sense, but it's written in a way that it feels like you're supposed to understand it perfectly, but there's too many moving pieces here. And maybe this is a problem with me listening to this book instead of reading it, because if I was reading this book physically, I would have notes in front of me, probably, or I would have scribbled them into the front cover so I could constantly reference it. But I can't do that with an audio. So on that end, audio has been a drawback. Even though I'm actually listening to the graphic audio version of this book, and if you're not familiar with what graphic audio is, every character has a different voice actor. They have sound effects in the background. It's like a full play in a audio form, and it's extremely good from production value, much better than a normal audiobook. But I feel like it might be hampered a little bit by this magic system. I mean, in the first book, they throw out these color systems at you, like every color that somebody could draft, which is essentially characters are pulling in colors that they can see actively around them. So if they were in an open field, there'd be a lot of green, and they could pull in green into their eyes and then shoot out this magical property from it in a physical form. And so you had the normal rainbow colors, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. And then later on, they start introducing sub-red. Okay, that's weird. Peril, what's that? Seed crystals. Now we're getting really confusing. Let's throw in black and white just to be safe. Every color gives a different emotion, and every one of them does a special magical property. It just feels convoluted for the sake of being convoluted. It's like the author felt like, I need to make a complicated magic system to be good, but I almost feel like he should have taken the kind of gone down the Brandon Sanderson school of making a magic system that is easy to comprehend but fair, or just gone over the top and made it crazy complicated like Steven Erikson will in Malazan. But so that's one criticism I have on this, and I fear that the next books will get even more complicated. This book has a problem in that it throws in action sequences for the sake of throwing in action sequences. It kind of reminds me of when you're watching a movie about, like, some adventure movie, and the plot's been, nothing really action is oriented has happened for a while, so they'll throw in like an alligator attack because nothing has happened for a while. And this is happening in the literature form. It's like, a random attack will happen that doesn't feel central to the story. The story would have been just as good without that scene, but it's thrown in just for the sake of keeping the reader on their toes. In a book, I don't need that. I don't have to have action every X pages. It's not needed. And in this case, it feels not natural. There are some battle sequences. I have been critical of the battle sequences in the past, but I did find that every book ends on a major set piece, and this one ended the best. I mentioned already that the last few pages it's inserted a major twist, but I'm not referring to that when I say the set piece at the end. I'm referring to the last 50 to 75-ish pages. Was a nice climactic finish to this book. I find that the Gavin Guile plot, and Gavin remains a character that I'm very divided on. On one end, you're told that you should be rooting for this character, but he's inherently a very evil man that has done so many bad things in the past and in the beginning of these books that he's irredeemable as a character. But you're supposed to like him, so I end up in this issue where Andros is clearly a much worse human, but I like him more because you're supposed to not like him. And I know that seems kind of complicated, but I swear it makes sense in my head. But the Gavin plot in this book took way too long to get started. The first third-ish of this book, his character development did not really move, but there was a lot of pages devoted to him. And it kind of pulled me out of the plot a lot. And in terms of the plot, I find the plot starting to meander a little bit. I don't know exactly where it's going. It feels like each book is trying to guide me down a different path. And ultimately, I'm left wondering, where are we headed as a reader? And not in a good way. Not in I totally have faith in the author that they're going to pull it all together, and I'm going to go back and read these books and say, oh, now I get it. I love it now. I don't get that sense. It feels like, and I had this theory that I ended up getting confirmed for me, that this book got extended, and it did. I heard that this book was originally supposed to be 3 books, and it got extended significantly. I think it's like 6 pages. It might be 5, but I think it's 6 books. Or maybe 5. And ultimately, as I look back on it, I think the series might have done better as a 3-book series. The plot could have been tighter. You would have had a more cohesive vision for where this is going to go. And ultimately, I think it would have made for a better read. So I am excited for the next book. Because of the way this ended, but I end up very reluctantly excited because I have heard that the next couple books end out on a really bad note, and starting with this next book. So in some ways I feel contrarian about a lot of things in life, and I'm hoping that I have a very contrary opinion to what most people say. I hope I love this book and I end up saying, what were y'all thinking? But I'm worried that they're right. I'm worried that I'm going to finish this next book and I'm going to be totally zapped towards finishing out this series. But I am cautiously optimistic, or whatever, however you want to say it, but I will be reading the next book and I'm not going to wait terribly long. I'll probably read it in June. So that's my review, and I appreciate you watching.